Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today it's going to be more of an unboxing because I got this special little box set from KIBLIND Atelier, which I believe is a French publishing company. But I quite like what they have on Instagram, and one of the features they have on Instagram is called SQUARE, where they ask different cartoonists to compose around a certain set of rules that I think are explained right here. And then this is a collection of those Instagram things, and I'll open it up and show what it is. It looks like it's, well, it's really nicely wrapped with these little stickers in this paper. I'm just going to be a savage and instead of gently taking it apart. Sorry, K-Blind, this is beautiful paper though. So you can see the box here is really well designed. It's got a lot of graphics on it that explain the project. It's also got graphics that show a little like icon of each artist that worked on the project. Pretty excited to see within the first 8 names listed here, 3 names that I recognize, and all 3 of them are artists I really enjoy. Maria Medem is someone's work I've seen on Instagram, and I've been waiting for her book Zenith to come out, and it just has not. It was supposed to come out almost 2 years ago now. I also missed her issue of Smoke Signal, which is really bad because I really enjoy her stuff. So I'm excited to finally own some Maria Medem stuff. Rupert Malat I really enjoy, and Jazem Viral. I've done videos on both of their different books by them. So really excited about that. And given those 3 that I know, the taste in those, I'm really excited to see the other artists in this. You can see just, again, the really nice design on the whole book here. Or on the whole box set here. So normally, if you watch the channel, you know I don't normally keep the boxes on box sets. But this one I'll keep because the whole project itself really does need a container. Plus, it's just so nice looking. Like, I know box sets normally look nice, but this one seems so much more important to the piece. It's like part of it. This whole thing feels like a piece of art to me. So I'm going to keep that. Also, I had this in, I'd unboxed it and filmed the video and then gone and looked through it and realized I should probably refilm the video. And I set this in my office and turned the lights off, and the glow from my computer screen was catching it, and the bluish light from the computer screen on these inks produced pretty much a blacklight effect. So these are all slightly fluorescent inks as well. It's just really beautiful. This is obviously risograph, so all of the colors are really intense and really pure because they're not being created out of other colors. So like this pinkish red here is very pure. The yellow is like the most intense yellow, and that was really glowing in the dark. But anyways, I wanted to go through and just show you what the project is and show one little piece from each artist. I don't want to give away the whole thing, but this is all stuff that was on Instagram for free, so I don't mind showing quite a bit of it. So this project here, the description of what it was is KBlind is a publishing company that deals in, I believe it's all risograph, and just really kind of couture little publishing company for risograph stuff. But they've been doing this project on Instagram called the SQUARE² project, and explains here what this is. SQUARE² is an original comic strip published each Sunday on KBlind Magazine's Instagram. Each week for 1 month, one of our favorite artists will draw a strip based on the following graphic principles. So these are constrained comics. A central square is the starting point, so you got to have a square in the middle, and then the story must be in 4 square frames because it's going on Instagram, and the artist has to use 4 colors. And I'm assuming since these go through the risograph, the artists are probably picking their colors based around the inks that can go into a risograph machine, but I don't know for sure. In this box, you can find season 1 of SQUARE². So there's 16 envelopes with 16 artists each get their own envelope, and then in each envelope, each artist also produced 4 comics. So Maria Medem is first, and the format's the same on all of these. It also looks like you can buy these individually for about, $12 12 euros a piece that you can buy these. And then I don't remember how much this was. This is obviously $100-something. So this is just the collection of them, but it looks like they can be bought individually as well if there's a specific artist that you like. But each little container is its own really well designed package that matches the bigger box, and then it's pretty much the same design on the inside. It's both in French and in English, which is great. But there's a description of who the artist is, like a little bio, and then the same description of the project here, and then you get the same thing in English here, and then just these graphics. There's 4 sides, 4 frames, 4 colors, 4 weeks, 4 artists by 4 artists. So you have 16 artists, 4 by 4. They're each doing 4 comics of 4 pieces a piece with 4 colors, and that's where you're getting that square squared. Oh, look, I can fit the whole thing on camera. Nice little cutout here. Here you have the whole season 1 collection, and then just a lot of information about the KIBLIND magazine and KIBLIND Atelier. So this is a quarterly magazine devoted to visual culture and contemporary illustration, launched in 2004. A few years later, the team set up an agency based in Lyon and Paris, specialized in visual communication and artistic collaboration for cultural venues, brands, institutions, and medias. In autumn of 2017, KIBLIND opened its own workshop gallery in Lyon, space for exhibitions and production to develop the magazine's artistic vision through the creation of illustrated objects using printing techniques, particularly risograph. Yeah, so it's a risograph studio mostly, and they're seeing what can be done with that technology. A new shop opened in winter of 2020 in Paris. At the same time, KIBLIND then embarked on a big publishing adventure with the annual Super KIBLIND collections, drawing reports, artist books, picture books, and the SQUARE² project. So they're now a full-blown publishing company, primarily focused on the risograph, and that's what these are. And all of these artists are obviously familiar with how to prepare art for the risograph. So we'll take a look at one from each of the artists so you get a sense of what this is. They're too long to fit on camera all together, but it's this little fold out of the 4 squares that would have been on Instagram, and you can see they're mostly silent comics. They're not necessarily abstract, but they're short, and they're mostly to do with poetics of form is how most people solve it. So here you're just obviously like the ellipse is going away and the square gets squished and the people hug. And this is very similar to all the other Maria Medem stuff that I've seen. That's what her work looks like, is these kind of surreal, abstract plays with form, or I should say surreal plays with form, and really focused on these beautiful colors. But one of the things that's really nice about the risograph is just the intensity of the color, and the presence of the ink is so physical, and the colors can be so physical, because like with this green's not made out of anything else. That is just the color of the ink that was chosen. And so you don't get like a normal CMYK print where this would be constructed out of a lot of different colors. There's a richness and a purity to the color and the way the ink sits on the paper that's different. And then on the back of each one of the books, they've picked some elements from with the inside of the 4 panels. And this is different for the next book. There's a different graphic that's been picked. We'll go ahead and look at another Maria Medem because her stuff is so beautiful. But pretty much just these little almost animatic transformations. And again, you can see the colors, how the colors exist on the paper, how intense the oranges and yellows can get. And then it's not a grid pattern, it's not like a Ben Day dot grid pattern. It's more randomized looking. So that gives it it really feels more handmade and like an art object than just a straight up book. So I really like, I get it. I get why people are doing risographs. And then obviously KIBLIND is doing risographs at a really, really high level. So this one is Simon Bailey or Simone Bailey, depending on the pronunciation conventions. Just so you can get an example of the artwork here and the way that this artist is approaching the idea of the squares. Sitting down on the couch and looking through these with Tori after I filmed my first attempt at this video, most of the artists approach, they have their style and they have their general approach to how the square is being dealt with. Like this artist is really about moving the square. So this one, I think, one of the other things I made note of while I was looking at these is some of them I think work better in this printed format. Like here, again, it's all about just movement. And this thing moves, and you can see it move off the page and then off the page again. So this works better to me all in one. On Instagram, where you were swiping, I could see the connections, but I like the visuals of it all together. Whereas there was some other ones that I noted, and we'll take a look at least one of them, where what was going on in the comic, it seemed like it was meant to be in that digital venue. Here's a Rupert and Malot. This one's in French. It's one of two that has dialogue. So this one I can't understand it. I took one semester of French and barely got a C because I had an awful teacher and I just didn't care. But I believe that the character, and this is the same in all four of theirs, the character is just assaulting the square in different ways. And I believe that the character is talking about, I'm supposed to make a picture with the comic out of just squares. Are you serious? Like, what the heck kind of challenge is this? I don't know what I'm going to do with this. And then they just destroy the square in different ways. So here it's burnt, and another one it's cut up. But it's shit, like something, I don't know how to deal with 4 images. That's kind of the gist of what I can get out of it, not being able to read French barely. But that's a Rupert Malot. Quite a fan of their work and their collaborations with different artists. Like Olivier Schrawin and Bastien Vives. So that's a really cool little thing from them. Here we have Mariano Pasquale. I only know those 3 artists, so this is also cool because I'm getting some exposure to some other artists. This artist very much a couple of these artists remind me of Tommy Masturi and his Simply Samuel style with this like clean line, cartoony, strange forms, but like animation style cartooning, and then the flat coloring. And then here you see, this is another one it's all a single image, so I can't imagine this one on Instagram, just seeing it I mean, I can, but like that's just a strange one panel by itself. So this is another one where I think venue-wise, the print venue works better for this. There's a couple of them where I think the Instagram venue works better, and then a lot of them, like the Rupert Malot or whatever, where it's kind of irrelevant. You know, the sequence is the sequence. Here's Jean Julien, I assume, since it's French, that it's not Jean Julien. This is much more of a like cartoonist approach, where there's like these little sight gags, and obviously the art is cartooning. And this is someone too where the way that they work doesn't seem constrained by the technology. I think a lot of these artists, not that the art looks constrained, you know, they're all have their own style and are doing amazing work, but they're responding to the technology of the risograph. A lot of the artists, especially someone like Jazem Viral, who I really, really love her work. I got a book and did a review about her stuff. Just beautiful poetics of form. So here you'll get a sense of what I mean by poetics of form. And this is one where I think that the proper venue for it would have been Instagram, because you can see that as you swipe, you basically add stuff with each layer. So there's not like a scrolling side view so much as a stacking, which is a very different way of approaching a comic. And that's, again, poetics of form. I just mean that Jazem Viral is just playing with shape and visual transformation of shape and line. And so in this case, there's a overlaying stacking effect. And I'm going to show all of hers, because I really am fascinated by how this artist works, and other artists like her. But you can see again on this one that really it's addition. Like things are just being added. That's the sequence. That's the narrative. And you can go and play the game of finding where the additions were at. But I'm assuming this, when you scroll back and forth and things like layer up and go away, that kind of animation focus of the thing is really what Jazem Viral is trying to get across with this work, I would assume, especially given that her other work is all of these poetics of form, these transformations of shape and line. This one's just absolutely gorgeous. And again, this sense of growing. I think this one works better as a strip, but again, imagine this stuff like coming together as you're swiping like an animation. This one also gives a really good look at some of the textural qualities of the risograph, the purity of the ink, and then some of the really beautiful effects you can get when you're actually laying ink. Excuse my ugly thumb here, but when you're actually laying ink on top of ink, like here where you can see the little dots through the yellow, that the yellow has some transparency. Those are the kinds of things that I think me and Sean are getting more and more interested in as we play with all these different screen technologies in Photoshop, starting to realize that we could probably mimic the look of a risograph on an offset litho and also have the control of the precision of the offset litho, but mimic the look of the little bit of chaos that can be in a risograph, or some of the less grid-like textures that you get with the way that dots are handled. Here's another one. This one works much better as a sequential side to side. And again, we can take a look at the ink here and just see like the purity of these colors and the crispness of the ink, the way it sits on the paper and all of that. It's just really gorgeous stuff. And then Jazem Viral is just a fantastic artist, beautiful designer, just absolute fan, and absolutely envious of her ability to handle form and line and kind of just motion is gorgeous. So this alone, I would have bought this box set just to get these four. I mean, I guess I could have bought them individually, but really excited to have those. But also a really good highlight of how some of these really work better digital, and I don't know that they were ever primarily intended to exist in print. It's an interesting question, as comics exist now both online on Instagram and in print in different formats. Slim Oddity, this is more playful stuff, and there's some interrelations between the four different comics here, so there's a bigger story being told. And again, I think just some really clever use of the risograph, like the artist is just being aware that the risograph is going to handle this like colored pencil texture look really, really well. And that would be harder to get that tactile sense of like a colored pencil being colored over some other stuff. It'd be harder to get that with standard printing. So I think that's really, really smart. All of these artists are very smart about how they're using this. It's number 8. We're halfway there. Number 9, Maria Jesus Contreras. Like Maria Medem, I've seen Anna Galvin. There's a couple other. I just read a book. I forget. I just did a review on one that was by a Spanish artist, Laura Perez. There's a bunch of women over in Spain that are just killing it, and a lot of them are using this kind of, like, a lot of them, the style reminds me of the Maria Medem. These ones are really funny. These are more illustrative. Again, kind of reminds me of Tommy Masturi too. Like, he would definitely do a drawing of a hand like that. Flat colors. But this poor little piece of cheese here. And some of them are very clever about, like, the square has to be in the middle, and like they'll just, there's not really, here the square is pretty obvious, like, as a character, but here it's just that thing there. So that's kind of fun too. Some of them are like this little Where's Waldo game of like, how did they meet the conditions of this? I don't see it immediately, and that's pretty fun. Christina Dura, I'm gonna guess is the pronunciation. This one, they all had this structure of like someone taking what looked like acid and then ending up with this crazy creature. The colors on this one are really, really intense as well. I like that quite a bit. Just these flat colors, no mixing. This is just the kind of thing too that, like, I don't know, it looks, the way the whole thing looks, like, I imagine when it's on the shelf, it's just like people are going to want to go, what is that? Because it's so different. Which is another reason I don't mind the box set. Peter Judson. I really like these ones. This is another Poetics of Form thing. So it's the same construction seen from 4 different angles. And as the angles change, there's certain things that just almost, like, this is very flat, this floor plan. And then here you would never get a sense of like the bathtub and all of the drain and everything, whatever these shapes are. Here you would never understand that this was see-through, and that you wouldn't necessarily know that this was on top or below. The pole disappears. Like all of those kinds of things that are entirely dependent on perspective, like the fact that there's a hole over here. Like I'm reading this as like sitting on top most of the time. So there's a lot of just trickery in here about what all this looks like. This is obviously seen from this angle, so we don't see the fact that it comes through on this side. So there's this, I think I've referenced Henry Moore before, but I've seen a few Henry Moore sculptures in person, and they're amazing because they work like this, that there will be holes where you don't think they're, like, you on this side you think it's just solid, and then you get around here and there's a hole in it, and it's like, well, how's there a hole in it? I should have seen the hole from the other side. And that kind of has the same sense in these. I'm going to pull out another one of these because I just thought it was so good. This last one in here, this is so good. It's just the same thing. We've just rotated it. The cube in the middle stays the same each time, but as all these other things move around, it kind of just looks like different pictures. There's these different little impossibilities that show up. And what a thing to be like, oh, I'm going to make a comic of a rotation. And that's poetics of form. It's just, what are the shapes and lines doing, and how do they work, and how do we not get meaning out of that, but how do we make something beautiful and something worth looking at out of that? So really like the Peter Judson. I'm seeing if I can find more of his work for sure. This is really cool because, like I said, I was only familiar ahead of time with 3 of these artists, so I've got a bunch of artists to follow up on too. Yeye Waller. These are definitely, I could see them swiping and having an animation effect, especially like here where we have seen, like, this is another one where venue matters quite a bit, I think, because if I'm seeing them only one at a time, you get that, and then you would think like, okay, well, the end of the train is about here, and then you get this, and you get the train passing by. When you put them right next to each other, it looks like the train has 2 windows and it says cool twice. But when you're swiping, that effect would be really, really interesting, I think. It works. It kind of works. I can read it as a train station with 4 different signs, but I know it's supposed to be the same sign, but it all looks so continuous up to here that you know, it's hard. It's hard for me to read them as separate images, even though I think it would work better that way. So this is another one of those ones where venue, I think, diminished a bit. I really like this on the back though. Yeah, and each one of these is just so like such its own little thing. I really appreciate that. So Maxime Moisset, I'm assuming a French artist here. Some more that really work well all as one, but would work well separately. And all 4 of these ones are different car chase from the police scenarios. Marianne Fayoli? Not sure. I think this was probably my least favorite. Just because I felt like the illustrations did the least with the technology available. Maybe it's the amount of white and everything in there. I don't know. I like the Rupert and Malot ones, though, that has a lot of white. I think because there's so much line work and it's not focused on the color, it's more like a standard comic book approach, cartooning approach. And really, like, I think all the other artists are using the look and the feel and the technology of the risograph a little bit more intentionally. Guillaume Chauchat. I also did not like these ones. Because all 4 of them start out with the same 2 panels, and then the same format of something happening in the third, and then a nonsensical something happening to the head. So I don't get it. Like, there may be some linguistic joke in French that I'm not getting, like turning the light off and on. I'm also not sure what this character's sitting on, if it's a butt plug or a nail or what, but I don't get this one. And again, I think the black and white with the minimal color, I don't know, it's just not using the risograph and the color and the texture and stuff as intentionally as everyone else is. But the fact that there were four of them that were all interrelated like that was interesting to me. Kind of the same format over and over in each one. And then the final one, the final season 1, chapter 16 is Igor Bastidis. Seems like these are mainly European artists, which makes me a bit jealous because I'm going to try and call my own shot here, but I would really like to participate in this. I would love to have an excuse to learn how people are preparing files for the risograph process. And I think with what me and Sean have been doing with all of the kind of playing with screening and things, this format would give me a chance to experiment with some things that I want to try, some different approaches. This would give me a great excuse for it. And I love what all of the artists in here have done, but I also think that there's a lot more variety that could be had out of this. I feel like a lot of them stick to, fairly, not all of them, but a lot of them stick to this kind of cartooning format in their art. And I would, I really think the boundaries of this can be pushed more. So, anyways, this is me blatantly saying if anyone from KIBLIND sees this, I would love to contribute. I'm gonna go run those experiments on my own, anyways, but we'll see how that comes out. So I just love this. I love this whole project. I love the concept of it. I like the constraints. Me and Matt Madden spent a long time talking about constraints. I love working within constraints like that. I think it's always clever. I think it's really cool to see a bunch of different artists responding to the same constraints. It really gives you a good sense of like the constraints don't make the art. Like within a constraint, there's so much you can do, and each artist is gonna assert who they are still, no matter what kind of constraints you put on them. That's really the what makes the singular nature of each artist, like a real artist that develops a real voice, so compelling. Is like you're gonna get something from them unexpected, something that you maybe expected, like Jazem Viral or Maria Medem. I guess I was fairly expected from her, but it's totally different and not what I expect from anyone else. And I love that. I love that. And these projects really highlight that. So I love the project. I love the idea of the constraints. I absolutely love and adore the production of it. I love the way they put it all together, the design of it. I think this is, but besides the fact that just certain comics I'm going to like more than others, I'm not going to like every one of these equally, which is also to be expected with different artists. But I think within that, that I could pull out a couple that I didn't like so much. Even given that, I would say that this is a pretty flawless project. This is a pretty perfect thing here. And I really hope that they keep going. I hope that there's a season 2. I hope I can have a season 2 box to maybe stack on top of this on my shelf, because I think that would make a nice little like 1-2. And then hopefully there's even more seasons after that. And really, 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 really hope that at some point I can contribute to this, because I just really love it and believe in it. So it's a pretty expensive project. It was 150 bucks, something like that. I don't remember. It definitely had some international shipping attached to it. And I get that it's not the most easily stored format. So I could see some barriers to people buying this, but it comes with my highest recommendation if you can afford it. And if these more experimental short form comics or just print, like print itself, books as art is your thing, this is a stunning project. I'm sure it's a pretty limited run. So if you're interested in it, run out, get yourself a Christmas present. You will not be sad about it. Like if this looks at all intriguing to you, you will be happy that you have it if you can afford it. So go out and get that. If you appreciate what we're doing here on the channel, there's 2 ways that you can support us. One is through our Patreon. There's a couple different tiers there where you can vote on some of the videos that we make. There's some contests where you can win some sketches, stuff like that. We use the money from that to help buy the books that we review, so that's much appreciated. And then the best thing you can do is support what Sean's doing with Living the Line Publishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at some of the books that are available that you can get now. Issue number 5 of The Abolition of Man is a real treat for me. We got to collaborate with one of my heroes, Luciano Floridi, whose philosophy of information, I think, is one of the most important things going in the world right now, has been essential to forming my own philosophical worldview and has been essential to my art practice over the last 20 years. So I'm so excited to get to collaborate with Luciano. He provided a wonderful essay to wrap up this series. It's a focus on how humans maintain dignity in the age of AI, and I think to end off this project, this is the perfect kind of coda to the whole project. So really excited about this and hope you all get to go pick it up. And I'm going to put it out there now. I think it's probably the most erudite comic that's ever been written. So please go check that out. I think this book really matters. Plaza by Yokoyama Yuichi. This is translated by Ryan Holmberg and is very large for a manga. So that's a really cool feature of this book, this standard manga size. And this is just a 200 some odd page representation of what Yokoyama Yuichi thinks of the Carnival parade. And he's just made this like relentlessly loud and rhythmic book that pushes all kinds of amazing boundaries of what comics and manga are. And we could not recommend this book more. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.